Ready to go. Hey everybody, welcome to another teaching episode of Real Brave Live. I'm joined here with my good friend Terrence Ma, T-Ma as we like to call him.
Hello.
He's to my right. And today we're going to talk about some singing, specifically how can I avoid cracking notes how can I avoid cracking notes? Maybe that's better. How can I avoid cracking notes as I sing higher? Sorry about that verbal miscommunication there. I can read. I can. So you're a singer.
I am. I like to sing.
And this is as a singer myself, this is a challenge, the cracking notes when singing, because personally, I tend to really kind of belt when I sing. So that support is important. I just try to warm up as much as possible. But
yeah,
we were talking about there's various schools of thought while singing, like breathing through your nose, maybe some through the mouth. But you were talking about maybe you could show a few tactics that work with your breath through the mouth to allow you to get some of these cracks or breaks in some singing voice.
Sure.
So talk to me about that a little bit.
It's a very interesting, the singing education is very interesting because there are just so many different techniques out there. Whereas for something like piano, violin, or any other kind of instrument, really, especially if it's like external, the variance is pretty small, right? Whereas you go to one teacher who teaches us one certain technique, and everything about their shapes, the way that they breathe is going to be different. And I think as a singer, you need to have this kind of experimental mindset with yourself to just kind of make sure that whatever you do, the advice that you're taking, you listen to everything, but at the end of the day, you ignore what you have to ignore and do what works for you. And it's a shame there's not more like clinical literature on this and clinical study, because I think the potential there is immense. To finally get some kind of like standard what works over long term versus what doesn't work. I think that there's great potential in that.
Having done this for over 15 years, running an organization that teaches every instrument, I agree with you. I find that there's so many different approaches to singing, but think about how many different types of humans there are. So how can you have one, approach when there's different throat sizes and different types of voices, and whereas the guitar is generally the same. Then you have your standardized stuff. But I agree with you, because there's so many people that'll come in, and like for us, we have our own, version of skills that people can learn in Practice Pad, and those are standard things. So how could you, what are you proposing for this specifically that would help with somebody understand this a little bit more?
Well, I think if you keep an aware mind, right? So if you ask yourself, okay, does this physically make sense? So when you breathe, right? So one breath that I've learned is something called the open breath. Some people may know it as the catch breath, where you open your mouth and you breathe through that shape. And so what physically happens is that your mouth acts as a funnel, and it intakes as much air as possible, right, into a small aperture. And so that you get the most amount of air in the least amount of time. And that, as opposed to breathing through two small nostrils, right? It just doesn't physically make sense that breathing through your two small nostrils would be faster than taking an open breath. And as far as that goes, what else you also want to look for is, what happens and why does that make sense, right? So if you open your mouth, right, and you look at your larynx moves down a little bit when you open your mouth and then you breathe. So what does that show you? That shows you that that process promotes movement in the larynx as well. And one of the biggest complaints that a singer gets, right, is how do I sing without strain, without tension? I feel tight. So if you do and you commit to certain movements at a kind of standard that alleviate kind of any kind of stress, that kind of force you to relax, then these kind of things will kind of stave you away from any kind of tension. And a lot of the times, like that cracking is your body saying, okay, like you need to stop, right? You need to give yourself a break.
Like
And
from being tense?
from being tense, right? From being not used to the proper procedure to hit that note. And so you have to build yourself a ladder that consistently gets you to that position where whether your break happens at like a high C sharp, for instance, right? If that consistently doesn't work for you, you can't hope to do the same thing over and over again to get there.
Somewhere right there, right?
So one of the problems is like, and I urge you to try this at home after you've warmed up, of course, is come in on that note immediately, right? Without having sung anything prior, and then try to sing it in the context of a song. Chances are, if you sing it individually, you'll be able to hit it. It might not be, ideal, but it'll give you a better feel for that note. And then slowly add in things around it, right? So that you very slowly start to piece things into context. And so that's also that brings us to the next point of segmenting your practice. So the first point is when breathing, right? Find a way to breathe that, of course, gives you a ton of oxygen, right, and a ton of breath. And then once you have that breath, right, it's a matter of, okay, how can you use that breath to efficiently support the voice?
You were talking about a song too, maybe a song choice that you could demonstrate when we get into a specific method for this, but you can demonstrate possibly something like this, yeah?
Yeah. So it's helpful when it comes to like any kind of physical activity to kind of work up to what your goals are, right? So when it comes to like working out, you wouldn't just go play a soccer game without doing a warm up.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you ask any athlete, right, like the warm up's not easy. Like after you finish warming up, you're in a sweat, you're a little bit out of breath, and that's okay. So after you do your exercises, your warm up, it may take you your warm up, a song, maybe a couple songs before you really start to get into the flow of things. So in order to kind of conquer these kind of breaks, you want to look for a song choice, right? So let's say if you're having a lot of problem with like a Journey song, like Faithfully or something that's really high, and what kind of songs can you pick to kind of get you there so that you're ready for that? And so something that's like something that's probably kind of mellow and something that you can practice your technique on without having the pressure of hitting a specific note. So for males, actually, for in general, it's hard to find low songs anymore, right? Because everybody wants to sing so high. So you might have to go back. You might have to take a little trip down memory lane to really find that stuff. I found that for male voices, you could go to the crooners, Michael Bublé, like Frank Sinatra, um, even someone more modern like Jack Johnson, who sings mellow stuff.
Yes, it's pretty. He's pretty down on the pitch
Mm-hmm.
front. Yeah, you
And
got to find. I think what you're saying is you got to find what it is that you want to sing. You can't be up here when you can only sing down here and sing it comfortably.
correct,
I'm
correct.
actually surprised by one thing though. I'm not an avid like big warm up,
Mm,
lengthy warm up person. I'll find where I'm supposed to be for support.
sure.
I'll make sure, and I say find because I mean you got to. It's a place that exists. Do you suggest that as well? Because I mean I'm not professionally trained, but I was trained to find where that breath exists. You said something extremely interesting, which is relax, which is what I can't do even when I'm just trying to watch a movie. And yeah, but like, and then finding the tune that works, I always push my limits. So
Yeah,
that's hard stuff to teach.
sure is. It sure is. I mean, all you can do is, I mean, like at the end of the day, all you can really do is your best and try to listen to smart people. And
Not me.
there's there's a strong case to be made, and I mean this in a big compliment, that you're a freak of nature. And those absolutely exist, especially with your musical know-how, especially that you play an instrument and you have a good ear and that you're highly attuned to probably how your body feels, right? And you stay active. A lot of these things, like you love sports, and these things come together to give you a special kind of perspective and awareness that perhaps not everybody has.
Interesting.
And so everybody comes from a different place. But I do find that, like, if you really want to level up your singing, learn how to use your body better.
Be aware of your body.
Absolutely, being able to isolate the different parts of your body, being able to breathe with just your stomach, like these things, you may like we may take for granted because we've been doing this so long. But for somebody who's never really who barely sings, like in the car or in the shower or at all, because it was so strange when I came across students who don't listen to music like that. Like a few years ago, that happened to me, and this happens at any age.
Yeah. No,
And
I know. It's interesting.
yeah, and so I think that, and the first thing I say to them is like, hey, like, I can see you really want to sing. You have to bring that same love to listening and absorbing music too, and that has to become your new obsession as well. Um, because it is, because you feel the music so much. I think on a physical level, you can observe and feel how different vibrations resonate in your own body. Right? We know that the lower we sing, the different places that we feel it happen. When we sing very high, the sound resonates and vibrates in a different place. So these things can be discovered by themselves. They certainly can. Um,
It's
but
not natural because when you want to go high, as far as I'm concerned, you actually have to go low.
right, right. You have to ground yourself.
Yeah, and so a takeaway for me from this conversation is, singing and talking are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can just talk like this all day long, and it sits right here and here.
Right.
Sit over here, because then you talk like this all day long. Down here, hello, folks. Welcome to the show. Now, if I talk like that all day long, people wouldn't take me serious. People don't take me seriously to begin with. But if I were to talk like this all day long because I'm concentrating my voice down here, well, let me tell. It's a put-on voice. This is
Yeah.
a voice, but
Well, I mean, there's various things that you can do. I mean, like in terms of speaking, right? It's like there is an exercise that I know of. and it's another thing that I do think is that as a singer, as any kind of performer, I think the element of speaking is probably tantamount to anything else. It's like if you want to perform, right, it's very difficult to be a performer without learning how to communicate. And so to add an element to your speaking voice is pick like an easy note. Okay, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna speak right here, and I'm gonna continue this, and I'm gonna let go, and then I'm just gonna carry my voice from that, and I'm gonna continue to speak wherever it was that I was singing. And so as you can see, right, and that's where your most relaxed speaking voice is.
Yeah.
And then you can see over time, I might even do it myself, that I'll have the tendency maybe to go back down here, and I'll let it go at the end. And so that causes stress over time. That causes tension.
Yeah.
And so going back to cracks and breaks, right? With the voice, right? Like you're using it all the time. With a guitar, you put it down and you can you let it rest. But if you're playing on that all day, it's going to go out of tune. It's going to get stressed, right? Like if you're playing 12 hours a day, like there's going to be wear and tear on that guitar, and that's what you're doing with your voice as a singer too. So learning to speak similarly to the way that you can sing is also very important.
What about like your mouth shape, like, and all this stuff, like, and how to catch your breath?
So yeah, going back to the breath is if we make that funnel, that kind of vertical ellipse with our mouth, and we breathe through that, we get a lot of breath in a very short amount of time.
I'm trying to think if I sing like that. So
the thing is, you probably do without even noticing it, because the thing is, if you like hold your head underwater for a long time and you hold your breath for 3 minutes, you come up. That's how you breathe. Your body instinctively goes to that shape because it's how you're going to capture the most breath in the least amount of time, so that you reoxygenate your body.
But if you, let me zoom in here for a second. People live. So if I'm here, more oval shaped, that's restricting air. If I'm here, that's bringing more air in.
Well, I mean, the opening is really the most important. So the narrowness that I go to is more of a technique that's specific to one methodology. So it's the openness that really is the physical attribute that allows you to take in a lot of air.
And not open for the sake of being open, because I could go like, because that's too tense. You want to be
you want to be relaxed about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because
the thing is,
try to open their mouth wider, but that is stressing every how many muscles do we have in our face? Like 80 or something like that? So many. Something silly. I am not a doctor, but yeah, I mean, so to your point, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's okay. I was saying that and to the point of more narrow as well, is if you're singing like this all the time, you're losing a lot of air.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of air conservation, the more narrow you can have your mouth, the more you can not only focus the sound, right, but you can also maintain more air. And so that's the real point of the shape, is that it sets a precedent for the remainder of your singing as well. So there's two parts: the openness and then the narrowness of it, really. And that's really just one school of thought, because at the end of the day, if you really want to, you can control your breath from here too, right? Like you can control how much you exhale. But what I like personally is to be able to witness through sight that things are going well, and to reinforce that concept. But a lot of these concepts really are just using external measures to condition what goes on inside, because singing really is so internal.
Hmm.
And the third point I'd like to touch upon is when cracks happen, it could often be due to overexertion, right? So it's kind of in the same vein as staying relaxed, where you need to be relaxed, but there are little tactics that you can use to make sure that you're not overextending, and that's using light consonants. So, for example, like B, if the word is boy, and you're trying to sing very high, and that word boy, and you go boy, right? Instead of boy, right? The lighter you can make that B, right? That consonant sound, the easier time you're going to have to get to the vowel, because the vowels are where all the sound happens. It's where the message really is communicated, right? It's where the beauty in your voice is carried. So the less time you spend on the consonant, right, the more agile your jaw, the more agile your lips are, so that you can access your singing voice sooner.
So this brings up an interesting pet peeve of mine. Singers of all different types of backgrounds, different genres, have different ways of pronouncing that word when they sing.
Yeah.
Specifically, because it depends on how it comes out of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is you. That's another pet peeve. Actually,
Sure,
that's
sure.
a bigger pet peeve. Yo.
Yeah.
How people pronounce you, because ooh is way harder to get out of your mouth. So they pronounce if you listen, folks, if you listen to any song, rock especially, because it's just an atrocity. Everybody pronounces you as yo, because if you're going to try to get you out, you're actually straining. So how do you get the word you out?
Yeah. The ooh is particularly interesting, because if you can get a good ooh, it lightens your voice. Like it makes your voice. It's one of those things that gives sharpness to your voice, and really, I don't know if there's an immediate trick to it really, but I would guess if they just formed their oohs better, like externally, that they would have an easier time. I kind of think, in terms of the rock thing, that somebody did it once and they were like, hey, that's pretty
That
cool.
sounds good. Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah, it's true.
But I mean, if you form an ooh, you can actually go very high in the same shape. You don't have to like move your mouth very much. And I mean, it's not just in terms of like the sound, but it's also in terms of diction. If you move that ooh shape around too much, you is not so difficult, right? And with certain context and the shortness of the word, but there can be times if a word has a lot of like oohs in it, like it could compromise the way that it sounds, and how easy it is to comprehend.
Mm.
But I would say getting a good ooh probably starts with a good shape, right? And to be consistent with it.
Yeah, keeping everything loose and relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know we talked about this in your notes here. You have a little, using as little force as possible, right, to produce sounds in general, but consonant sounds specifically. This is why I had a hard time doing vocal lessons, because to teach these things that I found to come natural, was difficult for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's theory behind it, but like if you don't, it's because it's a part of your body. It's
sure.
difficult for someone else to explain. You do a wonderful job of it, but for me, like I had a hard time explaining these really specific things because like it's a part of. It's not. I'm talking about a guitar, right? A guitar is
Mhm.
something I hold in my hand. I don't hold your voice in my hand. It's made
Yeah,
up of. It's got a different construct. It's human, but it's still different.
theory is terrible. Like it's such a it's a bad thing. I think Kevin actually told me it's like you you talk about theory when you don't really know how to do it. And
Kevin said that.
well, he didn't say it in those words, but when you have sometimes you have to resort to theory because it's the only way that you can conceive of the concept because right it's ideally everybody would communicate with just music, right? Ideally that's what we would be able to say, hey, I'm going to do this, now you can do it too,
Right.
right? Where but we have to put all these kinds of labels on certain concepts, and we have to add this kind of complexity. But if there's a way to take that theory, which is very necessary, which is because as teachers, right, like and musicians, we're the guys with the lab coats, and we need to be able to present it to people who don't want to wear those lab coats all the time, right? And so we can talk as much with theory as we want, and we love it. Like that's just how we do, right?
Right.
But then how do we kind of sneak that in so that it's easy and then people can start to deliver right away without having to have a master's degree or a PhD. And so that whole mouth speed concept, having a fast mouth, having light consonants, like that's tough to hear. I just fell asleep talking about that.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's a little bit out of the ordinary.
Right.
With
But
it.
what I've found is like I can just assign a rap song and they are able to get it that much easily. Oh, now I understand why mouth speed is important. Now I get if my consonants are too heavy, I can't finish the end of a phrase.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of have to just find creative ways using modern tactics to implement age old techniques from like hundreds of years ago, which really is what it is, which is very fascinating thing that these singing techniques are like they feel to me very like closely guarded to the chest
Mm.
and almost held as this kind of like secret amongst this like elites and hidden behind years of of schooling and institutions. And I don't want it to stay that way, and I don't think it necessarily will. um
Well, that's a good pivot to some methodology here. I know you have another point, but before we get to that, the what we want at Real Brave is to bridge the gap between this kind of highbrowed education of really complicated things. Let's be
mhm.
honest, this is complicated, and we've done this successfully for 15 years, but using a specific method, which is below you, discovery, deconstruction, development, and documentation, which is just a fun way of just talking about how we teach, and it's not that complicated. First thing with discovery, it's all about finding what the student wants. Really, that's breaking it down. Deconstruction is breaking it down to little bits and pieces. Okay, you want to sing "Don't Stop Believing." That's great. Well, let's take this one piece and let's talk about why you can't. Your voice is cracking. You know, if we're talking about this subject, why your voice is cracking at that one level, because you said you're having trouble with it. Development is doing it together, singing it, and doing it together. And documentation is just the weekly notes. we do that in something called Practice Pad. It's our own software, and you're using every day. And how are you? Oops. How are you doing with? Or how would you apply what we're talking about here in a lesson?
Mm-hmm. So for the discovery aspect, right? So because breathing is so fundamental, being able to introduce that in a simple way that's not necessarily, because some people receive the breakdown very well, right? They like that we can go through the steps, open your mouth, have your mouth in a specific shape, then isolate your support, right? Isolate your stomach. Some people respond very well to that. Other people need a different kind of demonstration. So
Definitely.
through that, I've found a balloon trick that people can do, and if they just kind of lay down on the floor, sometimes they can, and you tell them just to breathe regularly, they'll just isolate their stomach when it comes to breathing, because when you sleep, that's how you breathe.
I don't have any balloons laying around here. Let me see. I have a bag.
Yeah,
In a bag?
I might have a balloon. It would take. I would have to find it, but
do you have balloons laying around? You do. Right?
I've bought a bunch of balloons for this reason, but since the pandemic, I haven't really had to use them. But some people, and a lot of this comes down to tension. Is if you're a very tense person, and you have poor posture throughout the day, breathing and isolating it to just like belly is tough. I mean, I was working with this athlete who played professional hockey, and like very athletic, and understood and could conceive of the motion very easily, was able to isolate her stomach very, very easily. But then told me after maybe a minute or two trying it, is that she started to get sore over here. So because she was so used to breathing with her chest, and she was, and it was almost like the diaphragmatic breathing had gone so atrophied that she was experiencing soreness in muscles that she generally wasn't using to breathe. And so in cases like that, I had her lay down, and breathing in the beginning just with her stomach was actually difficult. So what I did was I would have her blow a balloon while she was laying down, and this caused greater activation of the muscles necessary for the breath, and so she was able to conceptualize it and work past the strain and work past the pain.
Oh, wow. That's a great deconstruction exercise. So you're taking one specific thing. You found one thing that she's trying to work on better, and working on that, because you can't work on the whole song from beginning to end if you're having trouble, like really specific troubles and parts.
Absolutely. And the fear is that, again, that's also a pretty rare instance, but that they do happen more often than we would like. So if you don't have the right breath, right, and the worst is somebody with a good voice who is unable to take full advantage of their breathing and their support, is going to be able to get pretty far, right, just by having good pitch and a good voice, and then they're going to hit a wall, and then they're going to try to just muscle pass through that wall, and that frustration and that stress is going to create a ripe environment for injury. And that's the last thing that we want.
Right. That's probably me. I probably fall into that category somewhere.
Yeah, and the one of the most frightening things for me is, because I don't specialize this at all, is when somebody comes to me and they want to sing metal, and they're asking me, okay, how do I do those pig squeals? How do I do those? How do I maximize my vocal fry? How do I scream properly? And I have to be honest, and I say, like, is your career riding on that? And if it is, then you probably need an ENT in your pocket,
Mm.
and have checkups once a week, once a month, to make sure that everything's okay. Because if that is your asset, you better treat it like gold and lock it up.
Yeah, or like any type of screamo type of music. Supposedly, there's a right way to do it, but I have very little. I shouldn't say faith, because that's probably not fair. Because I really don't. I'm not really quite sure. Well, my experience is that it's hard to scream for a very long time and do it in a healthy way.
Yeah, intuitively, it doesn't seem to make sense.
No, no. I mean, there's people that boast, "Yeah, I could teach you how to scream," and I guess there's a way to do it. I've never witnessed it, so it's hard for me to judge that. Sure, we'll get a comment that, yeah, I can scream forever, but I do know people personally that have sang incorrectly for a very long time and have lost their voices.
Yes.
Consistently. They can't sing at shows. I mean, I've done that. I've just had to stop drinking. It's probably one of the worst things you can do before you play.
Sure.
But I think these tips are helpful. Did you want to hit the fourth one that you had here about support, release, and reset before we end this discussion?
Sure. So we were talking about, at the end of the day, a lot of this really is about managing tension and to give yourself as much leeway as possible and managing your energy and your stamina. So when it comes to the release, and what that actually means is, so if you can see here, I'm going to pull my shirt back and I'm going to take a breath. While you sing and while you speak, your support comes in, right? Your belly comes in. But there's a chance, right? There's a very good chance that after one breath and one phrase, you're not completely depleted of air, right? So what you do at the end, once you're able to sing a phrase, boom, you relax your support very rapidly. You relax your belly very rapidly. And what that does is it allows you to, with the same breath you just took, utilize your support fully again. And what that helps you with is it gives your support that momentary rest. Even if it's just a split second. If you do 30 releases within one song, especially if you can do them fast, right, without the audience noticing, you just gave your support 30 seconds of rest.
Yeah.
And it allows you to continue. So even when it comes to your support, like, you're looking for ways to essentially to cheat, right? To take the easy way out, to be lazy. And of course, you're going to have to take the effort to implement that into your technique. But you want to be able to use the maximum amount of your support with every breath that you have.
Yeah, like I can relate to this from my own experience. Finding when to breathe and when not to breathe is, especially when you're on stage in front of hundreds, even a couple of people. It doesn't matter. You're in front of one person. That if you don't know how to do it, you will run out of breath in the middle of the song, and it's happened to me many times. Knowing when to breathe, how much to take in, how much to take out, and when to rest is, oh man, you could probably make a living just teaching that, because that's the people don't understand.
There are actually, if you get there are a lot of accompanists that double as rudimentary vocal coaches that just prepare vocalists the day before auditions or something, and strategize with them where to breathe. And that's probably one of the biggest things you can do for yourself, is print out your lyrics and mark where every single one of your breaths is supposed to be.
That's funny you say that, because I used to print out things in the manner in which I would sing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like one tune that we did together here at Real Brave, which was the Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
It's a hard song to sing
Mm-hmm.
because it's if you look at the rhythm, ba 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 ba, but it's easy to breathe there. Da
Right.
da 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 da.
Yes, exactly.
Right, but if you don't know, you're going from beginning to that last thing I just sang on one breath. You forget it. I just
Right.
do it. Not specifically that song. It's just acknowledging when people are like, when are they breathing? Is he gonna breathe? Is he gonna pass out?
Sure, sure. And this release actually the problem with taking too many breaths now is you dry yourself out when you do that.
Yeah.
And so another thing is for cracks and breaks, if you're too dry, right, either on a systemic level or on a superficial level, it affects your singing. So of course, before you perform, the day before, you should be drinking tons of water and be very hydrated, at least 24 hours in advance.
Or whiskey.
Or whiskey, and that in that case,
Whiskey.
in that case, nothing matters. Which is great.
Or in the case of Brian Johnson from AC/DC, tons of nails.
Yeah. But for this release allows you to maximize your support without taking another breath. And so let's say, just a small town girl living in a lonely world. If you have trouble hitting that song, especially after what you've sung 5 songs, that hitting that high note, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to really go for it. Or instead of taking a breath before it, you just take a release. Therefore, you have all your support left, and you can nail it as if it's a fresh, as if you're just singing fresh.
Is that an E? That song? It's an E, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's high.
It's high. All their stuff.
Just a small town girl. Even that word, girl. Girl. He doesn't pronounce the R. He goes, girl. He doesn't sing the R, does he?
I'm sorry?
Does he sing the R?
So in the, if we're going to talk in terms of vowels, girl has a schwa in it. So it's just the sound that he kind of has.
What's a schwa?
Oh, it's just vowel nomenclature. So it's the sound that we hear in words like the, in girl a little bit, or even when you're singing something like just a small town girl, that is not so much an as it is an And if we say if we sing and we know that's the vowel that's coming, right? The gives us the most clarity, right? And so if we can standardize the girl, and we know we're trying to hit the part of it more, then it's going to be consistent more in the long run. Because again, consonants get in the way of the vowels, the beauty of what you're actually singing. So if you can minimize the R, the G and the R and the L, right, you'll have less of an issue compounded later on.
I could talk about this forever because how people pronounce words in songs are infuriating to me. Well, we're running out of time here. In fact, we're a little bit over time. But I do think what I've realized in this conversation, I'm trying to answer this question, is that it's not one thing. It's a combination of things that are so important. We touch upon it, and when we're teaching, we use a software called Practice Pad. I know you touch upon this brilliantly, or touched upon it brilliantly just now. It's a bunch of different things. I think that we should talk in the weeks to come about consonants, about vowels, about the pronunciation of words, about the method, if you will, of getting stuff out, and making sure that we break this down a little simpler, because we touched upon so many things today that it's a little hard to understand, because you said it yourself. It's like there's so much to this that is somewhat boring but important. It's important. Like if we can get one thing across here, and what would that be? I guess what would you end with? What is the most important thing that we talked about today?
I think really the takeaway is that with singing is you need to get to a point where you can trust your own judgment, and especially because there is so much to learn, is to listen to everybody, right? And then at the end of the day, make a decision, because this is your health. It's not, you can get away with poor technique on the piano for a while and not see a lot of injury. You can have one bad night out singing and you can hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And
probably.
And so I think asking the right questions is really important when it comes to
getting the right teacher too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you can watch 10,000 videos on how to do it, but unless someone's there in front of you going, there it is, right there, do that again.
Yeah.
Hard time. All right, you stay right there. We're gonna end it right here, folks. And this is another teaching episode, and we've answered this question. And thank you for your time today, Terrence. Hang in there. We're gonna end this program, and we'll talk a little bit.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for watching.